Yeah, I learned it from watching you. I thought
It's great because the lights in here and everything.
some of his
It's
own.
just great. You can't see, but it's fine.
Yeah. Well, we should probably have more lights on, honestly, but
Yeah.
we don't. That's
Blue lights.
that's the way that works. But I think it's good. I think it's good. It's nice, reflective. So there we
Mhm.
go. Hello, everybody, and I see by the old clock on the wall, it's time for another edition of All the Best Words. You know how we do. My name is Matt Murphy, and I say all the best words.
My name's Cameron Smith. I write all the best words.
And here comes the introduction to All the Best Words.
I know words. I have the best words.
This is All the Best Words with Matt Murphy and Cameron Smith.
I don't know whether I'm impressed. You know, the people that wear sunglasses inside like a lot.
Oh yeah, they're called country music stars.
Well, I mean, I understand those people, but just sometimes you just see regular folks,
Right.
and I can't do it.
Mm-mm.
Like even now, it's making me uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, I hadn't told you that the last several weeks as I've worn the sunglasses inside. Like there are moments like in the studio where it's very bright. That's fine.
Sure.
But it's weird, man.
Yeah, because I feel like I'm not catching everything. Like there's some stuff that
It's
might be
almost
going
like
on.
those people that wear their earbuds all the time, like just in case somebody may call them. Like,
Do you ever encounter those people in real life and they're talking to somebody on the phone and you think they're talking to you?
all the time.
All the time.
All the
Like in the
time.
grocery store.
Wait, hey, good to see. Oh,
Oh,
ear.
yeah, got it. Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, hey, welcome to another edition of All the Best Words. You know how this works. I say a word, we respond. Cameron says a word, we respond. And hopefully at the end of the conversation, you're a little bit smarter as a result.
That's the idea.
That's what it's all about. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to let you go first.
Sure. My word to start off with is sense.
Sense,
Sense.
as in change.
No, as in common sense.
Common sense.
Been thinking a lot about this in the context of some of the political moments, the big military parade celebrating the Army, and just listening to everybody bloviate wildly. And you and I are both in the opinion business. I mean, we talk about issues, tell people what we think. But there's got to be a measure of common sense. That sense that we share.
Mm-hmm.
And on so many of these issues, whether it's the gender stuff, whether it's Iran and Israel, whether it's, Trump derangement syndrome, the level of common sense has declined precipitously over the last several years, and it needs to make a comeback. Those of us who possess this common sense should feel comfortable saying, that's weird. We should not do that thing. We should not, be extreme. And nowhere is there a better example than the Supreme Court's recent ruling on gender surgeries for minors.
Mm-hmm.
This is one that shouldn't be a close call. The states that have enacted these laws to say, hey, you need to wait on permanent altering surgeries and treatments for minors. This seems to be common sense.
Yep.
That most people say, yeah, well, I could see the state having an interest in that. The left screams, you're standing between doctors and their patients. And I'm like, well, if the doctor's trying to mutilate kids, yeah. Yep. Even if it's well-intentioned mutilation, that can be a thing.
It's kind of like we would stand between the drug pusher and the druggie,
right.
right?
But
the druggie really wants the drugs. Yeah, that doesn't mean that it's legal or right.
And these treatments and things that we're seeing are new and novel. And these are not things that have been tested over time and have a medical track record that suggests, hey, people are better off when we do these permanent things as kids. We just haven't really done it
Well,
that
and I'll
long.
go you one step further, Cameron. In the studies in places where it has been going on a little bit longer, a lot of those studies are creating a dynamic by which those nations are reversing course. I'm talking about a lot of the European countries that they started doing this 10, 15 years before the United States of America, and they've come back and they said, hey, you know what? Suicidal ideation doesn't really go down.
Right.
As a matter of fact, in some cases, goes up. So it's not helping the very core thing that the political left argues that it's going to alleviate, and that is thoughts of suicide and attempts to kill oneself, which if you're ever having any thoughts, please contact your suicide hotline. We invite you to do that. But so yeah, it's quite the reverse when you do have a few studies on it.
Yeah, and my take on it is we seem to equate some of these surgeries and procedures with care and concern. That if you really cared about these children, you would allow them to make permanent decisions. And my response is, wait a minute. We have tomes of biological information. I have 5 boys in my house, and I can guarantee all their brains are underdeveloped. I love them dearly, but I experience daily what the medical literature says about their brain development is that until they're about 25, the prefrontal cortex not fully developed. That's your reasoning capacity, your ability to kind of think through some of these things. It's why people get lower back tattoos as, teenagers, because they're like, hey, this seems like a great idea. No, your brain's just not developed. That's the problem here.
So, I love the word sense. It reminds me of my grandpa. And my grandpa said a lot of great things, but one of the things I remember him saying is they ought to call it uncommon sense because he doesn't see a lot of it walking around anymore.
Well, and one other little area it's a big area, actually, this Israel-Iran war. Well, people like Bernie Sanders are like, no, we absolutely, Israel's unprovoked attack and what they're doing, we can't have this. Wait a minute. You're telling me that if the U.S. does anything or if Israel does anything, that we're more likely to get attacked? They call us the great Satan.
Right.
They want to kill us and wipe us off the face of the earth, not just Israel, us, the United States. So this idea that someone who views us as Satan is somehow, less likely to harm us if we don't accomplish our foreign policy objectives, come on, common sense.
Well, they would think of us a little more Satan-y.
Right.
If we did some more satanic things.
We're the super double Satan.
We would be the double, triple probation Satan.
Right. And that to me is just think about what you're saying. And I'll give you one last little example. Senator Padilla, California senator, got roughed up by some DHS folks
Rightly
who didn't
so.
recognize
They didn't know who he was.
They didn't recognize he was a senator. And even if they did, they arrested him or apprehended him, and then immediately, once they understood who he was let him go.
Let him go.
Right. He takes to the floor and is talking about this with tears, and I'm like, sir, I understand that, that didn't go well, but common sense suggests you wanted political theater, and now you're really hamming it up on the floor of the Senate. Come on.
Yeah, it indicates that you got what you wanted, right?
Right.
Well, and do you think, final thought on sense, and we'll move on to my word, do you think that, I even hesitate to ask the question because I think the answer is obvious. It's almost rhetorical. The internet's making it worse.
It's making it much worse because you get into the silo. You only listen to stuff you want to listen to, and then you think the crazy things you think are mainstream.
It reminds me of the old Buckley quote that he said that he described liberals as groups of people who sit in rooms congratulating one another on how tolerant they are of other viewpoints, and then they find themselves shocked and dismayed to learn that there are any.
Yes. Well, the press likes to give itself many, many awards for all of its excellent work.
Oh, yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. Just like the cowardly Phil Williams just won an award out in California. Anyway, my word today, Cameron, is affirmation. Affirmation is my word.
Affirmation.
And it goes right along with, you mentioned the Supreme Court ruling, 6-3 ruling, confirming a Tennessee law in Tennessee. And you and I broadcast from the state of Tennessee. I know we have viewers all over the United States of America and the world, but right here in Tennessee, very proud to have led that fight and led that charge, not just on the right of individual states to determine what is and is not appropriate for young children, but also on this kind of culture war. And I find it interesting in the face of this 6-3 decision, the number of media outlets that continue to lie about all of this.
Yes.
And the lie starts with calling it gender affirming care. Now, I understand why they're using that language, and I understand that if we had someone who supported this type of activity, that they could sit here and help break it down. And their sex is not their gender.
Gender is a construct.
Right. Gender is a construct, and they're saying that their gender is different than their biological sex at birth, and so we're affirming that. Well, you know what you're also doing? I mean, I could say that you're mutilating genitalia. So can I call it genitalia mutilation surgery? And you be comfortable with that? Well, no, that's loaded language. Well, your language is loaded too.
Language is by definition loaded.
Right? So, but it's always loaded in one direction when it comes to the mainstream media and how they report on these things. Another use of the language or misuse of the language is that so many media outlets talked about how polarizing this issue was. Cameron, I try to stretch beyond my circle. I know you do as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in our worlds, we have the ability to do that. But I gotta tell you, this is not even an 80-20 issue.
No.
It's at least an 85-15 issue and maybe even 90-10, where people recognize that even if I grant you that as an adult in the United States of America, even if I would caution you against it, you have every right in the world to go to doctors, and you sit down with those doctors and you figure out what kind of care you want. And if you want to chop things off or add part, that is up to you and your medical provider. But we set age restrictions all the time on all manner of different things. We recognize that young people don't have, like you mentioned, the mental ability to make permanent lifetime decisions that are going to affect them until they die. And so why would this be any different? And the justification has always been, well, their lives are in danger. Well, the study after study indicates that that's just not true, that their lives aren't in danger. So they can use language like affirmation all they want to. We recognize what it truly is. And I applaud the United States Supreme Court and in what I would consider to be a unanimous decision. At this point, I consider 6-3 to be unanimous. Yeah,
It's fair. Well, but, and what's interesting for me is I have a friend from high school who's transgender. The conversations I have with this individual are, well, I just never felt comfortable in my own skin. I feel like this is how I need to be. To which I say, all right, because they're a
Cool.
consenting adult. They make those decisions. Frankly, they're very gracious. Oddly, a Trump supporter, which is very interesting. But even on this issue of gender reassignment, gender affirmation, whatever the language is, my friend who I grew up with is like, that's nuts.
Right.
And the reality is that he is saying, I chose this because this makes me feel like who I need to be. But to tell a younger version of me, now we're going to make some permanent changes. You're going to have a mastectomy. You're going to do all of these things. That's scary. And I think this, between common sense and affirmation, we just need to bring this full circle and say, some of you guys are just nuts.
Well, and even for the people that support, I mean, obviously we all recognize that there are genuinely gender dysphoric people.
Mm-hmm.
And those people, by definition, are telling me, I'm not telling them, they're telling me that a mistake was made and that they need to be more comfortable in their bodies, to be more comfortable in their lives. They are trying to correct what they consider to be a mistake. That's fine.
Sure.
That's between them, their physicians, and their faith. That's not any of my business. But the manner in which they do that as adults, you're precluding the ability to do it if you do these puberty blockers that some are suggesting you do to children. Because literally, I mean, not to get too far in the weeds to it, but if you do the puberty blockers, you prevent the growth of certain body parts that are necessary. Like if you one day want to do the final change and have sexual reassignment surgery, you're not able to do that because of the puberty blockers, because you don't have the parts that are necessary to do the reassignment surgery.
Right.
So you're dooming the child if they were to decide what they wanted to do as an adult. You're dooming the child with an inability to do that to begin with.
All the state's saying is you need to wait.
Just wait.
It's wait. It is not never.
Get
It's not
counseling. No. Get whatever other types of care. You just can't put blockers in your body that, by the way, we were told are reversible. In a lot of ways, they're not reversible. They're not, absolutely not reversible. And you're not allowed to cut on a kid for that purpose. That's
Right.
it. That's it. Well, what turned out to be a pretty heavy dose of all the best words today, but I thought it was a good one.
Yes, sir.
So he's Cameron Smith, and he writes all the best words.
He's Matt Murphy. He says all of them.
And this has been all the best words. Bye. That is how we do it. Now we change clothes and seats.